I stand before you as a regular human being. The only advantage I have over anyone in the room is that I'm older and I've had a longer time to learn about stuff and be around children. And I think I always really want to be honest with people and say, most of everything I will tell you I didn't know when I was a parent of young children. It's all come later, and I was speaking to a new friend right here about grandparenting and saying, it's God's redemption. We get another chance by being grandparents. And the things that we wish that we had known earlier and done with our own children. But I can tell you, of our four, all of them have grown up to be quite remarkable, very well-balanced, capable people, despite our ineptitude. I'm Nancy. I was here at the Waldorf School for about 40 years, half of the time as a kindergarten teacher and half of the time as a growing support teacher for young children. Wanting to make sure that children's opportunities to grow up into healthy human beings, healthy, well-rounded human beings is respected, which is really what Waldorf education is all about. It's to recognize each individual as special and having very deep talents and some things that are harder than other things, and looking how we can support and assist each of these children to grow up into the fullness of their possibilities as human beings. And so, in early childhood particularly, we are this bizarre, some people might say, way of approaching childhood that we think it should be slow and gentle, imaginative, warm, exploratory, tolerant, and having teachers with endless senses of humor. And that's one of the things that I'll recommend for us, is that for us parents as well, that we do our very best to look on the light side and just look at the children not as antagonists, which we can certainly feel like sometimes, but find different ways of responding to the things that children do that are just childrenness. And another confession is that when I first developed sharing these thoughts and ideas, I titled it, How to Get Your Child to Do What You Want Without Talking Yourself to Death. And I did it deliberately. It's a provocative title, and it did bring people to come. And then one night, this was in New York City, I had a father stand up indignantly and come to the middle of the room and said, I am not staying to hear this. I will not impose my will upon my child. And I said, oh, thanks for stopping by. So that really made me think. And so I decided I needed to have a less provocative title that also was really more in line of the spirit of what we would like to offer to children, how we would like to invite them into the world. This word invitation is one of my very favorite words. It's not an imposition, it's we want to invite. And when we say, so I finally said, when I was rethinking and trying to reframe it, I'm originally an English teacher, and words are something I play with a great deal. I want to make sure that the words, as precisely as possible, communicate the intention of what's meant there. And to say, well, we are the adults who have much more living experience than the children. And there's got to be somebody who knows what we need. And so it's not in the older days of very authoritarian parenting when you do what I say because I'm the grown-up and I'm the boss. And it doesn't matter if what I say is reasonable or not, you do it. And we've come very, very far from that kind of mentality. But, and the danger of wanting to not impose ourselves on our children is to being so wishy-washy and we don't act as though we know what to do. And that's as bad on that pole as the authoritarian is on this one. So everything that I'm going to share with you assumes that we are responsible adults. We care about our children and our grandchildren enormously. That's not a question at all. And so, of course, when we say we need to leave, we need to do this, we need to wash our hands, although we'll try different vocabulary than that, it's because we know that it's healthy and it will help all of us in our family get to where we need to be. And so we look at say this, we are the loving adults, and even if we feel incompetent and unsure, we have to make decisions on behalf of our families. Now, one thing I have to start with is that how do children learn things? How do they find their way into the world? And Rudolf Steiner, who is the inspirer, the founder of Waldorf education, explains children learn through imitation and example. Now, we can know that this is true. We'll hear that if we say something and our children will parrot it back to us. And for me, this became so vivid when a college expletive exploded out of my mouth, unbidden, and I heard it echoed back to me right away. Oh my gosh. We have, another friend once said to me, you know, you have a family gesture. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, you all stand like this. Oh, I guess we do. Well, so it was to see that the children pick everything up, and they are so open to all things that come to them that they can't discern what's a good thing to imitate and what's bad. Everything's equal. And so this is we hold this in our minds as teachers in the school. We have to be so careful about what we do and what we say, how we move, how we arrange the environment and so on, so that what the children experience is worthy for them to copy us. And so we are the models, we are the examples of what it is that we do. And I'll come back to that. It's kind of a thought that just occurred to me last week that you're not going to like. But I'm not going to say it yet. So, I remember having come through a very academic, logical, thoughtful education, that everybody is logical, and all you have to do is be logical and explain things with good reasons to other people, and of course they will understand. And often, if our firstborn might delude us into thinking that that was true. It's not. It's a masquerade. They're imitating our logic, but what's going on inside, it's just not true. Children are watching and they're absorbing what we do. And they're absorbing how we map our inner moods as well as what we do externally. And they're not thinkers. There's really nothing rational going on inside a little child's mind. It takes quite a while. When we get to age 7 or so and children go into first grade, we can start to be a little bit more direct with them. And they will respond because they are starting to be able to think that. Rudolf Steiner described, and it's actually been validated in other research, that the kind of logical thinking of consequences, cause and effect, really doesn't awaken until age 12. And so we try to reason. And how many of you can say that reasoning with your child is always an effective strategy? Raise your hand. Okay, point made. So, the first thing that I will say is that this is Nancy speaking, but I stand behind everything I'm going to say. And it will contradict a lot of other expert advice. We talk too much. We just really do. We've been encouraged to be discursive and all of this and explain things to the children and so on. And when I said it, you'll see, without talking ourselves to death and without talking our children to death. Because if we talk too much, it means that it suggests that the first thing we said wasn't really important. And we drowned them in over-speaking of what it is what is needed in the moment. That was one of the first important things that I discovered as a kindergarten teacher. When children were not responding to my voice, and they were not responding to their names. And I went through the, Ryan, do you hear me? But when I went up, this is a friend, so I can demonstrate with her. I need your hand. I need you to do what I want you to do. I need you to do it. So. All right. That's all we do. No speech first. Movement right away first. This is a principle that's, at least in our Waldorf teacher training, that it's inculcated in us. You move first before you speak. And if you look at child development, children learn to move before they speak. And so we're actually following kind of an archetypal paradigm to say that movement precedes speech. And if we can think about that as watched our little children grow and take that as kind of a motto for ourselves, that will really help us. And both that I move before I speak. Okay? So, the first thing, say you are needing to get ready to leave in the morning, or it's dinner time, and the child is playing, very grossly engaged over here, and you've called the name, dinner's ready. Come on, let's wash hands. It's time to wash hands. Dinner's getting cold. Effective? Not usually. But if one can go to the child, and I'm going to say not confronting, a little bit to the side, a little touch, and your hand down. The child, 80% of the time, will take your fingers and look at you, and then you start to move. Once we have the child in motion, then the rest of it, that's the biggest step in this, to get the child moving first. And then we can speak, but gently and objectively. I'm going to go through the list of these various things I have for you, and then so we have some time at the end, because I know, and I've even included the last page, yeah, but. There are so many yeah, buts that we encounter all the time. So we would not say this is the magic that will work in all circumstances. Unfortunately, it won't, but it will help in many, many times. One of the things that is so helpful about these is that it helps us to develop a habit pattern of how we approach the child. And the more the child experiences this with us, it establishes a habit pattern in them. And then when they feel that touch, and they're, okay, my loving caregiver is going to take me to something that's important. Early childhood is so much about developing these healthy habit patterns. And when I say healthy, I'm not being judgmental about anything. It's just the way that we say there are certain things that, of interaction in our homes, in our classrooms and so on, that just make things so much easier. And if we establish those consistent patterns of how we do things and how we approach something, it makes all the difference in the world, because over time it will sink in. And I promise you that that's a truth. But it's not instant, and it does take time. Now, I don't think I didn't talk about it so specifically on here, as well as being sparing in our speech. And I've got to digress a little because I love this. So, and loving in our speech, not gooey in our speech, not too sympathetic in our speech, but objectively warm in our speech. This was a little quotation from a 6-year-old who said, "Love is when you know your name is safe in another person's mouth." Oh. So again, love is when you know your name is safe in another person's mouth. So that's another little gem as we can think about what are we striving for. Invitation, not indulgence, not permissiveness, just good, solid, healthy guidance that will help us all live together more calmly and more easily. And so, what that requires of us is to be consistent and repeat the same thing over and over and over in the same way. It's called rhythmic repetition. And it's one of the most powerful things that there is. So, my result, I have hip trouble and I have to do those exercises. And I have been very bad, really bad. And so when I wake up in the morning, I feel my age. And I said, okay, I can't do that. I've still got a lot of work to do. So it's the rhythmic repetition of doing the exercises, which are not hard, but they build up over time, and that's how strength comes. It comes in behavior, it comes in muscles, it comes in all that ways we can just think about in our own lives. When we are consistent in doing something, how it builds. And if we don't do it consistently, it won't build. At least not as efficiently and not as quickly. So we want another, I'll get to the kind of imagination. If we can make an imagination in something, that's always powerful. But I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. Because I want to come to choices. Okay, here's where the controversy in the door. We are the loving adults, the loving caretakers of the children, and we really know what we think is best. We know when we come to pick our children up at school, if we have to leave right then. Honey, would you like to go now? It's not a choice. We're trying to be overly polite and solicitous. And the child says, no. It was posed as a question, a yes or no question. And so we have shot ourselves in the foot right there because we need to leave right now. And so rather than, or to say, We're going, okay? There it is again. No, it's not okay. I'm not ready to go. We have to speak objectively and clearly, and not with that little okay or something like that, or would you like this, or would you like that? If you're saying we're going to the ice cream store, would you like vanilla or chocolate ice cream? That's a good question. If you really are offering that as a choice. But I think we really need to watch what we say, listen to what we say, and evaluate, am I implying something here that I don't really mean? It's very confusing to the children. And it's very problematic for us in figuring out how we get ourselves to where we need to be at what time and so on. Another thing that we can do, and here's another, I'm going to turn my watch off so, okay, I can see. I get very enthused. I lose track of time. Another thing that a motto is, if you can't change the child, change the environment. Okay, a 3-year-old is a 3-year-old. They are 3. There is 3-ness. There's 5-ness. There is 6-ness. That gets a little different, but nonetheless, there are certain things that children will do at different ages. And we can't make them reasonable. We have to set up the environment in the best way that we can so that we can do what we need to do. And that means in your homes, and some of you maybe really have dived into this and already have a real good start, and that is to have things in an organized form and sequence in these times when we need to get moving. For example, the shoes are always in the same place. The coat is always on the same hook, whatever. When we get up in the morning, and it doesn't matter what the order is, if you go potty, brush your teeth, eat breakfast, then get dressed, if you get up, whatever your order is, that's fine. There's no God-given order for getting up and getting ready to go to school. But whatever order you establish, do it all the time. Absolutely do it all the time. You will be astonished at how much easier things become if the children don't have to say, now what do I do? Now what do I do? It shaves time off so dramatically that it will be one of your very best friends. If that could mean selecting the clothes the night before and having them laid out. So if you're helping your child peel off the pajama, and the shirt is right there, and then you guide an arm into it and just pop it on. That establishes both a habit pattern in time and a habit pattern in body movement and anticipation. Is if there is another caretaking adult in the household with you, then you have agreed that this is the routine that you're going to follow and establish, because it has to be consistent all the way around. Okay, so here's the part that I said you're probably not going to like to hear. And this, I've been thinking a lot about this term, this idea of imitation. And what teachers are commenting about, I get to talk to a lot of different early childhood Waldorf teachers in other parts of the country, Zoom meetings, and I get to travel to visit other schools as well. And teachers are reporting that children are not as responsive to the things that we offer. They're not as responsive to singing and to the movement games that we play. They're not as responsive to stories. They have a harder time settling in and attending. And so, of course, there's this big question about media and the influence that media has. And it's certainly not affecting children.
He needs help with the restroom.
It is affecting children. Because what do they see adults doing?
So we have.
Or they seeing, unfortunately, I don't have grandchildren around all the time because I'm on the computer hours and hours every day. That's what they would see on my screen. What they're seeing is passivity. They aren't seeing people being active and really moving around. And I cannot help but wonder if that, because we as adults, our activity is here, it's here, it's here. That's not activity that's interesting to children, but they imitate whatever they see. And so, if we want children to be active in the household, if we want them to be responsive to getting ready to go, they have to see that we are active. But do we really do things in the house? Do we vacuum? Do we sweep? Do we actually wash dishes by hand? Even if we don't have to, but just because you can see that it's a human activity? I mean, we could go down the list of all these wonderful conveniences that we have, but it's really shifting the way that we live, and it's shifting the opportunity that children have to see what it is like to be an upright, active, engaged human being in the world. And that's what we're really trying to get to. We're really trying to open up that avenue for the children to be interested in wanting to grow up and be a human being. Okay, I'm just kind of dropping little thingies at you. Any of these could be a whole conversation for an hour in and of itself. So what I want to go to is that when these strategies don't work, and as I say, they won't always. And there are times that there are things that we can't control. We can't control if a child's getting sick. We can't control if a child's overly hungry and we haven't realized that. We can't control. There are just so many things we can't that make a child less resilient and less adaptable to what's going on. And we will have meltdowns. They will. So the point is to try and not provoke one. If one happens, then we just have to endure it. So we're on a walk, and most of the classrooms here take a walk early in the morning, and then the child said, "Oh, I'm tired. I can't walk anymore." Okay, let's run. It works. If you can challenge them to something else, kind of take their mind out of it, then you've gotten them moving, and that stirs up something in a new impulse, and it's released the potential antagonism and resistance. Now this is where I can say we talk about little stories. This is an actual example of a child who was here in our kindergartens, and the mom came to one of these talks, and we were talking about stories. And so when she made up a little character called Little Bear. And so in the mornings, when they were trying to get out the door, and she would say, "Oh," and she started with, I don't remember if I ever told you about Little Bear." "Oh, what Little Bear?" "Well, here." And as she takes the finger and they walk out the door, she makes up a story about Little Bear. And you might say, "I can't make up stories." Yes, you can. You can. Everybody can make up stories. Our children are not Nobel literary critics. They are not. They just, really? Really? Well, what happened there? And so then every time that, so that was the way they got out of the house. She would make up a new little something until it was a habit that we didn't have to have the story every day. And then, when he was in 2nd grade, he said, "Mommy, I haven't heard about Little Bear for a long time. What's he doing now?" How deeply that little story went into the child. And what makes it so precious is because you, as the loving adult, are creating it for the child and making it alive in that very minute. So little stories like that, one of my dear colleagues who I work with very intimately in teacher training, when in her kindergarten, she told stories about herself, little Leslie's, baby Leslie stories, which oh my gosh. And of course she was naughty. Even if you weren't naughty, you can pretend that you were, and tell your children these kinds of little stories that endear you more to them, because they love hearing these kinds of stories. And they're human stories. Because of course Little Bear does all kinds of things that other children do too, and gets into kinds of scrapes and so on and so on. There's this happens and that happens. And in the end, it all works out just fine. So any time that you can engage something like that as a little imagination, it's very powerful. Another thing in getting children moving is, so this is from our own, yes, not shameful, but embarrassing memories. We had a room where the toys were, there was a toy room. And sometimes you were just so afraid to open that door. And for me to say, well, go in and clean it up, which I tried. When I finally said, oh my gosh, where do we start? Come on, we'll do it together. To do it together, to engage yourself in the activity with the child, to get them moving. I mean, and then, if we all do it together, of course it goes really fast, or much faster. And we can sing silly songs, we can speak nursery rhymes, we can make up a little story, we can do any sort of thing. But the fact that we're doing it together changes the mood completely. And it opens up the possibility for this community building. It's the same thing in the classroom. The teacher has to be engaged in the activity of ordering the classroom, not just telling children what to do. Except this was not my classroom, but I heard a story about one child who was so busy, so very busy during cleanup time that his job was to sit on top of the piano and sing a song. So we could use a lot of different creative ideas of how to make people, give them things to do that occupy them, that contribute in some way or another like that. Alrighty. Questions, when the children ask questions. Here we go to, how much do we say, how much do we talk? So what we start to practice as teachers, is if a child asks a question, to answer the question specifically and only what they asked. Teacher, what does a polar bear eat? Well, I think polar bears eat fish. And see if the child walks away, satisfied that that's the answer. If the child isn't satisfied, they might ask another question. But we would, in our head world, we might be tempted, if we know a lot about polar bears, which I don't know, but to say, oh, they eat fish, and the kind of fish they eat is this, 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 and this, and they also, sometimes they even kill seals and eat them, and then, okay, way too much information. The child doesn't need to know those things. They're trying to pick their way, little pieces of their information and understanding of the world in small bits. And to go over and over with that is really overloading them. I know that we have been so many people and experts, and you go to the bookstore and you the line of parenting expert books, and if you pick 10 of them off, maybe even 2, they may very well contradict each other and tell you completely opposite things. So this is counter to what has been advised to us as parents of cultivating good language skills and so on. We can speak very well, but not that long, is I think what we're striving to do. Set good examples in what we say, but don't overdo it, don't overspeak. Okay. I think I'd like to stop there and open this up to your questions. It heartens me that there have been many smiles and some nodding heads. So yes, please.
So I know that in most of what we're trying to push for our children in the Waldorf education is very much a controlled environment to allow them to blossom in the manner that their developmental pattern or their developmental ways chooses, not that the outside world is choosing to fix you and follow that. However, we at least for our family, I come from a somewhat opposite, but not in a destructive, not in a negative, just very much a different end of the spectrum to where things were done a very certain way. It was more comfortable done that way. Showroom ready house was just the anxiety rider of everybody. So it was a different environment. And so approaching this in that manner, is there anything to look ahead of when you're being very accommodating and welcoming and understanding of the child and everything, to where at a certain point in time, if you enter into the regular world, say going on a ride for a roller coaster or something like that, to where it is an understanding that that is not a detriment to you, to the child, taking that extra time, not being able to do something because you're following these correct patterns. You're not forcing them to go to enjoy the ride that you paid for because that's not something, and that is the correct way. It's not the correct way to, what you're teaching us is it's not the correct way to, at a certain point, tell the child that, enough stuff, we're just going to be doing this. I don't care if you're freaking out, meltdown, whatever, this is what we need to do, which is a very old style of about parenting, and that's far more destructive than taking the time to have them learn in their own manner, even if it's not agreeing with what's going on.
Yes.
Okay.
We know our children, and we read our children, and children are they're just so different. I mean, of our 4, they were all so different, which was very humbling. Because we thought, we got this one. Oh, that doesn't work for you. So, and everybody is stressed out. The world is stressed out, totally stressed out. And we have a lot of anxieties that are pushing us because we want our children to have, I want to say, satisfying lives. I don't want to say successful because that implies money. Satisfying, which means that we help them to gradually step toward things that are intimidating or unfamiliar without forcing. I'll stand behind that.
Okay.
I think it can be destructive to say, you gotta tough it out. Well, we have to first get strong inwardly and secure in ourselves before, as adults, we can tough it out when we have to. But I do think that this more gradual supporting and affirming of children and who they are is a much more humane way to live life.
Yes, and it's just the support of having an expert be like, yeah, that is what's better. So.
Nancy, can I say something about that?
Please.
Because I think about this, I'm a teacher, an early childhood teacher, and I think that it's also really important to make sure that you encourage your children, because sometimes, depending on the child, I mean, they're all different, but there's some children that really don't want to try anything new. They're quite fearful, so then we have to warmly encourage them sometimes.
Because rather than just like, you gotta do this, as encouraging stepping in,
Well,
just doing the same, right?
maybe we could just take one step over here.
Yeah,
Or let's see if we can reach out and just touch that. But, there's a nice balance of, letting them go at their own time, but also, and just saying, oh, well, they don't like that. They don't want to do that. But
Yes, that's
making
very,
sure
very
we encourage
powerful. A word that comes to mind is accompanying the child. And so if we do something, well, I'll come with you. Or let's do it together. Something like that. And again, these little incremental steps are powerful. But as you say, question? Yes, please.
We were just talking about about repeating ourselves, right? And this, I was hoping to hear a little bit on that. You had a little tidbit, so I'd love to hear what you had to say. 'Cause you got
Yeah, I just read this blog about, or maybe it wasn't a blog, it was a video, but, yeah, on my phone on a video. It was about, like, if you keep saying something over and over and over again, that's when you get frustrated, and then your voice goes up, and your anger level goes up, and then by the third time, you're like yelling at them, and, you're mad, and then they're crying, and everything's going. So he's like, well, I stopped that by, I only ask once. It's either you do it, or you get in trouble, and then you do it anyway. But that's it, like, you get one time, and that's it.
Okay.
And I don't know, I feel like some of that is a little old school, hard, but the way he said it, I'm probably not relaying as well.
No,
Like,
I think you're good.
because he was a lot more soft about it.
So, and this is true of an older child. Again, with 6-year-olds, I mean, they do get fussy at us. It's their developmental imperative that they have to do that. So we just need to know that that's true, and we just have to be clear. And so this is where our time-pressured lives become our enemies, because we can say it objectively. This needs to happen. I wouldn't say needs to, I don't like to use that word. Well,
Yeah, this is our schedule, right?
yeah, we were always told it's just how my family operates, this is how our family does things, and we're all a team, and you're a part of the team, and this is how we do it as a team. Other people might do it differently, but this is how we do it.
and wait, not threaten, and please, I just,
Or not threatened, yeah.
or else. Please don't say or else. Just stop. Just stop.
When does it start to become so where you're uncomfortable if it's a threat, but in reality, that's just you, being super nice and not wanting to even upset your child, to where the natural consequence of you not listening is you're gonna be going to your room and going to bed. If you don't listen, I'm sorry, I can't keep on the lights, let you listen to this. At a certain point, what is that defining moment of, threatening? Is it literally just the words or else when you add that? And that's where because obviously your child can say, lie, and, you're threatening, you're taking that away, and it can make it seem like that, but that's part of their development, so.
I would respond with, this is just the way we're doing it.
There we go, okay. Fair enough.
This is a different
topic. With what you said in mind about how children aren't always reasonable and they're not always going to listen to all the words when you're explaining something, I find it super challenging caring for my grandchildren all at the same time, and they're 4, 3, 2, and a 6-month-old. And so my challenge is often helping them share or take turns. I think those are 2 different skills. Any words of wisdom on that, Nancy?
They don't share.
I know, they just don't understand. It's like,
No.
me.
No, it's, oh, God bless you.
I need 4 of everything. so they don't have to share.
Some people do that, and I must say, if we can, I don't think that's such a bad idea.
Okay.
Because I finally figured out in the kindergarten, when a child would come say, so-and-so won't share, what that really meant was, I want that,
Right.
and they won't give it to me.
Exactly, it's my turn because I want it.
That's right. I mean, that's, boy, learning to share. Well, look at us as adults. I'm sorry.
But are we all avoiding conflict and never,
Yeah.
like, if we avoid conflict for all their lives, they don't understand how to resolve it.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that using this approach is a conflict avoidance. I will say it's acting proactively so that we don't fall into conflict when we don't really need to.
Oh.
That's it. We will have conflict and we have to stand our ground. We really do, because they can't trust us.
So what's your solution for conflict, resolution with like, say, my 4-year-old, when he doesn't want to help with chores or whatever? Is that just wait him out until he does it, or like,
Lori?
No, you can't wait them up. But you do it with them. You have to do it with them.
well,
They're
yeah,
not
I
like-
always do it with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do
You just
everything.
have to.
I don't think a 4-year-old can be left alone yet.
And depending on what the chore is, like if it's putting something away, I bet you can't put those blocks away faster than I can.
That is
We
the one.
just started doing that one,
Yeah, that's the one that works on him. You were talking about running and walking. If I'm like, hey, we'll race, he's like, or I can put up the dishes faster than you can.
You already have the sensing of it, and just as we can think, how can I make this playful? How can I make it a little challenge? And it will, as they grow, of course, they grow faster than we get used to. That's the hard thing. We just get good at one thing, and then they're in a new stage.
It's silly, they love that. So sometimes I'll be like, does that go in your ear? I'm like, no. I'm like, does it go in your nose? You know, like if we're trying to get dressed. I'm like, no, you know, so sometimes just a little humor.
Yeah.
When they're old.
And I hear that, like, about the community something, and we're just doing that, and so put your shoes on. You say it once, they haven't put their shoes on, then you're going to put their shoes on.
Well, so there's another thing that we can do. So I might step out of the camera. If we can get them going, and so for example, and the teachers know this, dear, so well, especially now cold weather, snow and such, having to put on so much gear. And so, for example, we've gotten the snow pants on, and then it's boots. And then I might say to the child, boots are waiting for your feet. Here, this one, it wants to tickle your toe, and you just start to slide it on the foot, and almost always the child will automatically slide the foot in. And you've started the movement and the pattern. They have to learn so many patterns, and this is a thing too, teaching independent care skills, getting dressed and so on. If you think about what you have to do, what you have to know in muscle memory and body orientation to put on a coat. So you have to bend your elbow, get it up there, slip your hand down into the sleeve, rotate it like that. And then the other sleeve, you have to do the same thing. You have to get up there like that and rotate it. If we had some kind of, magic machine that watched all the movements there, we would be astonished at how complex that was.
Miss Mary fixed that. She throws it down in front of him backwards,
Yeah.
and then Otto puts his hands up.
Yeah,
and
that's
puts it
all
up. And then he won't even put it, like, if I try to put his coat on now, he just throws it in front of me. He's like, I'll do it. Get out of here.
See, that's it, they really do want the independence. And you have a system that works fantastic. So that you've created a form where he can be successful and independent. And that's what we're striving for. And we have to give them a starting place. And so if what we can do with some little imaginations like that, some teachers and parents, I don't know, I hope you know nursery rhymes. Oh, I tell you, nursery rhymes are such a good friend. And I know that they seem to have fallen out of approved stuff. Children in nursery rhymes, the great power of nursery rhymes is that they're very rhythmic. And as you are getting ready to do something, you're preparing, if you can speak a nursery rhyme in this rhythmic way, the children are carried by the rhythm. It helps them regulate their movements and kind of get into a flow, as well as us to regulate our, we're going to be late, we have it all, whatever we need to do, to kind of cool ourselves down and saying the world will still turn if we're 3 minutes late. Nobody's going to die. It's just kind of allowing ourselves a little bit more reasonableness. The one other thing I would say is simplicity. I would encourage you to kind of inventory your home environment. What are things that you have that are really not essential? That create clutter, that take up space, that kind of distract or confuse the ability to focus on what we need to do. That's very powerful. And I will tell you, this is such an interesting thing. When I get to visit classrooms, the classrooms where I have observed that the play is the most rich and active is in the classrooms that are very simple and have fewer toys. I think this really works for home as well. So you can't keep things cleaned up because there are too many toys. Well, then give away what is really not played with anymore, or at the very least, rotate some of them in a box and put them away so you've reduced the quantity of what's there. That's very helpful. And then children will discover new things about what and become just stuff. So rhythm and routine, repetition, economy of speech, lots of laughter, getting the children moving before we speak, and an economy of speech. Just this is an example that happened here at school. So I was talking about this in the faculty meeting, and one of the grades teachers said, "Oh, my class, they just don't listen. They don't listen." So I said, "Well, tell me what happens." Because as a remedial teacher, that's jumping to a conclusion to say they don't listen. So I say, "You mean they don't respond when you say something?" "Yeah, they don't listen." So I said, "Well, how many times do you say it?" "Well, I don't know, 5, 6. "And when did they start to listen?" "Yeah, about 5 or 6. I said, "Oh, have they suddenly learned that they don't have to listen to you until you've repeated 5 or 6 times?" So the next day he went into the classroom and he said it once. And they looked up at him in shock. And he had their attention. Had no idea that he had inadvertently created this habit pattern with them. That they had learned very subtly that they didn't have to respond until a particular time. And he created a new threshold. So it's time. Thank you very much for coming, for your very kind attention. And blessings on your families, your parenting, your whole good lives. Thanks.